You know, we make choices all day, every day. Some are small, but some are huge. Decisions that can shape our businesses, our entire lives. But what if there was a scientific way to make the perfect choice? I mean, every single time. A way to get the absolute best outcome, even when you're juggling tight budgets and all sorts of tricky rules. Well, there is. And it's called operations research.
I mean, think about it for a second. You want to crank up your profit, but your budget is fixed. Or maybe you want to get somewhere as fast as possible, but you've got a bunch of different stops to make. Almost every important decision is a puzzle, right? It's full of trade-offs and constraints. So how in the world do you solve it? How do you find that one single optimal solution that's hiding in a sea of possibilities?
All right, let's make this super clear with a simple example, the butcher's dilemma. So a butcher wants to mix up the perfect meatloaf using ground beef and ground pork. And right away, you can see the trade-off. The beef, it's pricier at 80 cents a pound, but it's leaner. The pork is cheaper, only 60 cents, but it's got a lot more fat. The butcher's goal is twofold. Make a pound of meatloaf for the lowest possible cost, but, and this is a big but, the fat content absolutely cannot go over 25%. So, what's the perfect mix? To answer a question like that, you need a seriously powerful tool. And this tool, believe it or not, has a pretty wild origin story. It wasn't dreamed up in some corporate boardroom or a university lab. No, it was actually forged in the heat of battle.
So, what is this secret weapon? It's operations research, or just OR for short. And really, at its core, OR is just a scientific method for making better decisions. It's all about taking a messy, complex problem, looking at all the different moving parts, and then using a structured, logical approach to find the very best way forward. The journey of OR is just fascinating. It all started back in World War II. The British military got this brilliant idea to put a team of scientists together. We're talking physicists, mathematicians, you name it, to solve urgent military problems. This team got nicknamed Blackett Circus, and they used math to figure out things like the best way to place radar stations or how to hunt submarines more effectively. After the war, businesses looked at this and went, hey, we can use that. And these same techniques moved from the battlefield to the boardroom to optimize everything. And today, well, with the power of modern computers, OR is the invisible engine running behind the scenes of so many things we rely on every day.
Okay, so how does this thing actually work? How do you get from a tangled, real-world problem to that one perfect answer? Well, the heart of operations research is a surprisingly simple three-step method. First, you have to define the problem. What exactly are you trying to do? Minimize cost, maximize profit. And what are the rules of the game? What's your budget? What resources are you stuck with? Second, you build a model. Now this is the really clever part. You translate your goal and all those rules into the language of math. It's kind of like writing a mathematical recipe for your problem. And finally, step 3, you solve that model to find the best possible outcome. So let's circle back to our butcher. We already did step 1, right? We define the problem. Get the cheapest 1-pound meatloaf possible, but keep the fat under 25%. Now it's time for step 2. We've got to build that mathematical recipe, the model. And this is what part of it looks like. Now I know, it might look a little intimidating if you're not a math person, but trust me, it's actually really simple. Here, Z is just the total cost, the thing we want to make as small as possible. X1 is how much beef we use, and X2 is how much pork. So all this equation says is the total cost is 80 cents times the amount of beef plus 60 cents times the amount of pork. That's it. That's our goal, just written down in math. Okay, so once we translate our other rules, like the fat limit and the fact that it has to weigh 1 pound, into math, we have a complete model. We can plug this whole thing into a computer and let the science of OR work its magic. So what's the answer? What is the butcher's perfect meatloaf recipe? And here it is, the optimal mix. To get the cheapest possible meatloaf that still meets that strict fat requirement, the butcher needs to use about 58% ground beef and 42% ground pork. Any other recipe is either going to cost more or it's going to be too fatty. This isn't just a good answer, it's the single best answer. And the final cost for this perfect mix? A little under 72 cents a pound. And here's the most important part. Operations research didn't just give us a good guess. It gave us the probably best answer. The absolute rock bottom, lowest cost you can possibly get while still following all the rules. That's the power of this method. Now, look, a meatloaf recipe is a fun little example.
But this exact same logic, this very same method, is being used right now all around us to solve some of the biggest and most complex problems on the planet. OR is kind of like the hidden engine that makes our modern world run. I mean, have you ever wondered how a grocery store knows exactly when to reorder your favorite cereal so it's always on the shelf? Or how an airline figures out its incredibly complex flight schedules to get the most out of every plane and every crew? That's all operations research. From organizing factory assembly lines to minimizing the time you have to spend waiting in a queue, OR is the science that's making all these systems work a whole lot better. But here's the real takeaway for you and me. Operations research isn't just some complicated software for giant corporations. It's really a way of thinking. It's a mindset. It's about being really clear on your goal, understanding your limits, and then methodically finding the absolute best way to get things done within those limits. So think about your own world for a minute. Your job, your projects, maybe even your personal goals. What's the main thing you're trying to achieve? And what are the constraints? The time, the money, the resources you're working with? What problem, big or small, in your world is just sitting there waiting to be optimized?